Hello there and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host Joe Rimmer, joined today by Ian Doyle. How are we, Ian?
I'm okay, you?
Good, thank you. And how are you, Paul Gorst?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, we were just sharing a joke before we come on, which is spilled over into the beginnings of the pod, which I think listeners might enjoy.
Yeah.
Oh, should we just mention it anyway?
Well, I'm not. I don't know. I don't know whether we can. We'll mention it next time Theo's on.
Okay.
Yeah. The wait is finally over. The transfer window is back open after 4 days. Or was it 7 days?
6 days. Yeah.
So I don't. Why did they even bother closing it? It just seems a bit silly, doesn't it?
There is a reason for it. It's because it can only be open a certain amount of weeks in a year.
Ah, right. Okay.
Is that
There
right?
you go. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know
There you
that
go.
until the other day. So there you go.
Thank you. Thank you for. I didn't think you would answer that question. So
We're
seriously,
getting it off
you
now.
did.
Sort of insight you get on
Yeah,
this podcast.
that's it. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, we've got plenty to get into, and I've got lots of listener questions to go through as well. But if you do have a question, we are live on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, pop it on the comments below, and I will. I'll try and pick them up as we go through. Otherwise, give us a thumbs up, like, subscribe, give us some stars, leave a comment, say something nice about Paul, say something nice about me. You know, all those other nice things.
Press the bell.
Press the bell.
Press the bell.
Press the bell to subscribe. All those nice things. But before we get into it, I'm just going to do a little message from our sponsors, which of course is Saily. A branch of NordVPN. Saily is an eSIM which you can download now. We've got a special discount on it, ready for your holidays. It's brought to you by NordVPN. Affordable prices, avoid scams, protect your privacy, 24/7 support, and you can save on mobile data, which is probably the biggest one when you're traveling abroad. You can choose from several affordable eSIM data plans in over 200 destinations with Saily eSIM, and you'll always have a connection when needed. So go to the App Store and download Saily and use the code BLOODRED at checkout to get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase. For more information, go to the episode description box for further details and click. Ian, don't laugh at me. Don't laugh at me.
It's difficult to say
producer,
that.
You should support me. You should
Podcast
support me.
episode description box.
Yeah.
Podcast episode description box.
Yeah.
Mr. Kroll, would you like to join us and see whether you could say it? No, he's saying no.
Right. Let's get into it. I've got questions. I'll come to them in a minute. Let's just start with a couple of the headlines. Let's start with Wirtz.
We actually did. We haven't done a podcast, have we, since the agreement? Because we did it Thursday last
Oh yeah,
week.
we did do it Thursday, so we haven't done it since. You're right, Gorsty. So let's start there. Obviously, the news filtered through on Friday that Liverpool had reached an agreement with Bayer Leverkusen for a deal that could be worth £116 million, which will be a British record. It's a real statement of intent from Liverpool, isn't it? And a medical will soon follow once he's finished his holidays.
Yeah, that's right. 116 million. Liverpool obviously been in negotiations with Leverkusen for 3 weeks. Tabled 109 million, had that turned away. 114 got them a little bit closer towards the finish line. And it's like we said on Thursday's pod, really, it will happen at some stage. It's just a case of how long's a piece of string and how long does Simon Hughes negotiate. Simon Hughes lots to negotiate.
Yeah.
But Richard Hughes. Simon Hughes will probably walk to Leverkusen to talk about wow. Now I like Simon. So Richard Hughes negotiating with Simon Rolfes. That was where the tripped on me words, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Richard Rolfes? That's good.
The two sporting directors have been thrashing it out and they have come to an agreement. Yeah, 116 million, 16 of it are add-ons and Liverpool paying the base fee of 100 million. Had been some, not necessarily reports, but a few schools of thought that suggested it might be a 6-year deal because it gives Liverpool more of a chance to spread it out across the course of a longer contract. But we do think it is going to be a 5-year deal that he'll sign, and we'll have his medical at some stage this week. So Liverpool about to make club history and could eventually make British history, and it's being viewed as a bit of a real coup inside the club. And it's one of those, isn't it? I think if perhaps other clubs, maybe, namely Chelsea or Manchester United, if they were doing this sort of thing, you'd maybe have a bit of reluctance to suggest that, well, this could go wrong, it could blow up in the face. But with Liverpool, they're a bit more strategic, aren't they? They're a bit more cautious, a bit more sort of exhaustive, when they are coming to spend big like this. So you do think with the history that they've got over the last 10 years in the transfer window, it's one that they feel is going to be a real sort of success, and being viewed alongside the likes of Van Dijk and Alisson internally, and that's the sort of level he's going to have to come in at.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Liverpool obviously spend their money very wisely in the transfer market, but they view this one as a transformative signing, don't they? As they really kick into, I was going to say kick into life in the slot reign, but they've already won the title, but really sort of transform the squad.
Yeah, the thing is, as well, is that whenever you spend that much money on a player, you always think, well, what happens if he gets injured after one game? But then that's the same for all the transfers, isn't it? You look at all the big money transfers. How many of the really, really big ones have been a failure in terms of just the Premier League in the last 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Right across the Premier League.
Yeah, you just think about it and you go, well, Casado's done well at Chelsea. Lukaku still did well at Chelsea. He was he didn't less well.
Second time round.
Yeah, second time round. Declan Rice done all right at Arsenal, hasn't he? So it seems as though a lot of the clubs now, when they spend these absolutely ridiculous amounts of money, is that they do their due diligence and make sure that it's, unless, as I say, some injury, unless it's going to get sorted and they're going to have an impact. And we've said this so many times on this podcast, but you said within 2 months of the season starting that the attacking midfield was an area where Liverpool could improve. And obviously that's what they've felt. And it was only 2 years ago, by the way, I just checked then, that they had the £111 million bid for Casado accepted. And I know it never ever works like this, but you go, okay, so they had 111 million for Casado. And I remember at the time we spoke to people at Liverpool and they said that was literally just absolutely every last bit of money that we've got we can spend on transfers. That's all of it, just for that. But since then they signed Endo and Gravenberch.
Yeah.
Then last season they only signed Chiesa, and they did have a deal for Zubimendi lined up. And I know that they've got Mamardashvili's coming in. There has been that kind of scope for Liverpool to spend that amount of money on a player, which has been knocking around now for a couple of years. And if everything that we're led to believe about Wirtz, or Flo, as Theo calls him, his mate, he's going to be a massive success because you don't spend that amount. It's funny, again, going back to previous Liverpool big signings, I know without giving too much away, you spoke to Stan Collymore a bit earlier today. And I remember when he signed, and after about 6 months, he was saying, oh, great, they've signed me, but I can't, they didn't really know what to do with me, as it were. And I think that tends not to happen now for Liverpool. When they make signings, they know exactly where these players are going to go. And again, from what we're led to believe, when Slot met with Wirtz and spoke to him, the fact that he had a very clear vision for the player is the one thing that sold him, compared to somewhere like Bayern Munich, where he would have been competing kind of the same spaces as Musiala, who's obviously another very good player, and perhaps Manchester City, who, in any case, kind of walked away when they realised that Liverpool were so strong favourites to sign him.
The fact that he's a Bundesliga player of the year is the one that really excites me. What he did with Leverkusen. Are we saying it's last season or the season before last now?
It's still the season just finished.
Yeah, so 23-24, when they obviously go invincible, win the Bundesliga for the first time in their history, win the German Cup, beating finalists in the Europa League, and he was the main man for that team. And he's got double figures for goals and assists in the last 2 seasons. He's almost the archetypal number 10, but he's got a real work ethic to go with it, which I think you're going to have to be. You're going to have these days if you're going to be a modern player who's going to be coming into the world class brackets. So yeah, it's just ticks so many boxes, and it's going to be fascinating to see how he develops and adapts. And having all being well, he will be in this week as a Liverpool player, so he's going to be at the AXA Training Centre for training July the 7th, and then he's going to be playing parts in the pre-season friendlies. So he's going to get the benefit of a full pre-season schedule as well, which doesn't always happen. Certainly last year, a lot of the players were new to Slot, and they only came in sort of the final week, of the Anfield friendly. Can't remember who played. That was at Sevilla.
It was Sevilla and Las Palmas, wasn't it?
Yeah. So this time around, and it's not just Wirtz, it'll be Frimpong as well, and whoever else comes in, and the rest of the squad. They're going to get a full summer, which I think can't be sort of underestimated how important it is.
I think as well, if you look at the calibre of clubs that were in for him, Man City, you trust Pep's judgment, don't you? By and large, to pick quality players, and Bayern Munich, anyone who is doing anything in the Bundesliga, they tend to snap up pretty quickly. So that gives me a lot of confidence that he's got the class to really.
Plus, he's only 22, so he's not even going to be the finished article yet. Anyway, it's like if he lasts, I don't know, 4 years at Liverpool, and then Real Madrid tried to sign him for nothing. Let's be honest, they'll probably try and do something at some point. Then they'll have got some very good years out of him. But But yeah, it was interesting. I was looking at the European Under-21 Championships at the weekend and looking back at the last ones and see where the Wirtz had played. He's only 20. He'd already done his bits for the Under-21s. He was already playing for the national team in Germany. And I know they're not quite as good over the last 6, 7, 8 years than they have been previously, but he's having to take that responsibility as well. He scored, didn't he, recently against Portugal in the Nations League semi-final. That's tough as well, for a player to be playing in such a key position for a national team. Mm-hmm. So, he's got the pedigree in terms of winning stuff. He's got the pedigree in terms of international football, and he speaks English, doesn't he? So he's not. I think he does. He does. Yeah. I think he does. And going back to what you said there about having a proper pre-season, all of Liverpool's players will have had an entire season playing with an attacking midfielder, which they didn't necessarily have last year because obviously they were learning the new way of playing on the slot. Mm. And it will also be interesting to see what it does in terms of whether Slot decides to change things around a bit, because I wrote something last week about when he signed, he was asked about his tactics. So he'd said, well, anyone who says I just play 4-2-3-1, they need to go back to analytics school or something. And of course, it turned out he literally does play 4-2-3-1 almost every game. But I think he was talking more about the slight movements of players and this, that, and the other. So it would be interesting to see, because it'll make a massive difference, because he's a totally different player to Szoboszlai. He's played most of the season there. Yeah. Different player to Curtis Jones, and a different player again to Harvey Elliott, who had 1 or 2 appearances there as well. So it's said that, because I've not seen loads of him, I'm not sure about you two, but he's very good at playing players in between the lines and playing, gaps in behind. But Liverpool don't really have a forward at the moment who plays like that, so we'll have to wait and see. We'll
have to come on to that. Yeah. There's loads to come on to, because I know a lot of people are asking about Kerkez in the comments, and we will talk.
Yeah, he signed in the end.
Kerkez. But we'll come to that. I've got some good questions, and they're all really about Wirtz, different types. So I'll start with KJ, who has emailed in from Texas.
Have you been to Texas?
Never. I'd like to go to Texas, actually.
I've been to Texas twice, yeah. Went to Houston for 10 days covering Everton.
Really?
Yeah, it was everything. And this was 20-odd years ago.
He is in Houston, actually.
This was 20-odd years ago, and everything that they say about it is true, basically. Everything is a lot bigger.
Yeah.
From Dallas. He's from
Dallas. I went, just outside Dallas. We stayed for second time round.
Yeah.
It was warm, I'll tell you that. Even the wind was warm. Does that make sense? It's like, there's a bit of a breeze. It's like, oh, God, it's even worse.
So his question was, what did Ian make of Texas on a visit? No.
You don't have to answer it now. Done it.
Right. He says, I've been following the podcast for about as long as I've been a fan of the Reds, and I'm grateful for all the work you'll do. He said, I've heard a fair amount of discussion about Frimpong being a potential Salah replacement positionally, and questions about midfield roles now that Wirtz is in. But I'm surprised that no one has spoken about Wirtz as a Salah replacement in the goal-scoring creative sense. To me, it seems like Wirtz is the answer to the goals creativity that Salah brings. Following that line of thought, do you think that the Van Dijk replacement could come in from another area of the pitch in terms of control, quarterbacking he offers, or might it filled by another centre-back because of the nature of the position? Similarly, if Wirtz is the Salah replacement, do you think we'll see a totally new formation in 2 years' time once Salah and Van Dijk have left, or do you think Slot will continue variations of his 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3 theme? So there's quite a few questions in one.
It's better than our questions.
It's an interesting one. I've never really considered Liverpool changing formation. I think just because we've got used to them playing three up front for a decade now. Really, it seems to be the way teams work, isn't it now? Certainly at the top end of the pitch, 2 wide forwards and then a number 9, and then you've got varying types of profiles for the people who lead the line. Roberto Firmino sort of, certainly at Anfield, and it was the stylised false 9, wasn't he, which sort of made it trendy, and then you've got Erling Haaland types who are a bit more traditional in the way they operate. So I don't know, I can't really see Liverpool changing formation, but maybe in a post-Mo Salah world, they might be forced to. I'm not really sure who the up-and-comer is on that right flank who can sort of do a passable job replacing Salah.
Yeah, I definitely think Wirtz is the long-term Salah replacement, and they will find ways of working with them both in the team for a while, but you don't spend this sort of money on a player with the abilities he has to play in these different positions without thinking long-term, and they will be thinking eventually they need someone to succeed Salah. It makes sense.
Well, he's not going to. I'm pretty sure Salah won't sign another contract. No. He's got 2 years to bed in, as it were.
But in a way, Wirtz is the Alexander-Arnold replacement in terms of the creativity. We spoke loads to me about how are Liverpool going to get that creative force back in the team? And it might not necessarily come right back. And I guess this is it. You know, central attacking midfielder. You know, the sort almost the trademark old school number 10, isn't he? With his socks low and an actual number 10 on his back, playing in the holes and all that sort of stuff. But then he's got that work rate to go with it as well. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to seeing him play, really, because I remember looking forward to seeing him play at Anfield last season and don't really remember him doing much.
He had a shot second half. It was Keller was in goal, wasn't he? He made a double save towards the end.
And I think when it comes to replacing Van Dijk, I think formations and styles of play change depending on the players that you've got. And Van Dijk, if they can't find that profile, it's going to be very difficult to replace Van Dijk in his profile, isn't it? So if they can't find that type of profile, they might tweak the way they play. It's hard to know, isn't it, until they find someone who does replace him in the longer term. But I think Wirtz is somebody that they definitely see as like the long-term successor that you build the team around.
As you said, you wouldn't spend that much money on him and not have the proper plan for it.
Thank you, KJ, for that question. I hope there was very few elements on it, so I hope I hope that was an answer that you were looking for. This goes back to something you were mentioning before. Sam King has emailed in and asks, with the size of the fee, he'd like to ask the panel, which Liverpool summer transfer...
The panel? I like that, the panel. Yeah.
Your time following the club excited you most. For me, it remains Stan Collymore. I was 15 when he signed for us in the summer of 1995, at the peak of my excitement levels when it came to Liverpool-related transfers, and absolutely convinced we had just got someone who'd become the best striker in the world. He'd been unreal at Nottingham Forest the previous season, had everything in terms of physical and technical attributes, and was at a great age. It felt such a brilliant arrival with him and Robbie Fowler. We're definitely going to take us to the title. I remember literally jumping for joy on the day the deal was confirmed. Sad how things didn't turn out as hoped. A big shame. Anyway, intrigued and excited to hear everyone else's answers.
We asked this question the other day, didn't we?
I know who mine is.
Yeah, but mine was Collymore for all of them reasons.
Yeah,
and also I think United tried to sign him as well, and he wanted to come to Liverpool because you got to bear in mind at the time that Liverpool was seen as the up and coming team. They weren't the Spice Boys until the end of that particular season, and that was mainly because they didn't win that FA Cup final. If they'd have won it, nobody would have been fussed. But they didn't win anything over those 2 years that Collymore was there. They did get to a cup final and finish fourth in a 2-horse race for the league the following year. And by then, Collymore was out of the team, and a young Michael Owen had got his way into the reckoning a little bit. So, yeah, Collymore was probably the one for me. In terms of more recent, Van Dijk, because you just knew that he was going to make the massive difference. And I think that was one where those signings were made more special or exciting because the players had quite clearly turned down other clubs, big clubs, and you could argue at the time bigger and more successful clubs to come to Liverpool. So that obviously gives them another level of expectation and already ingratiates themselves with the fan base because they've done that. Yeah,
that's interesting. Missed his name, the guy who asked the question. He's mentioned Sam King, because, like you mentioned there, I just had a chat with Collymore. He was staunchly defending his record at Liverpool. I think he mentioned 50-odd goal involvements and 80-odd appearances at Liverpool, which, if you're getting that now, you're getting looked at as a real player, aren't you? He obviously has the Newcastle moments and one or two others. I think he mentioned his number of assists directly for Robbie Fowler, and when they signed him, I thought they were getting a superhero. I haven't seen him at Forest and some of the things he did. A little bit younger than Sam was, but I remember seeing some of the things he could do and thinking Liverpool have got a superstar in waiting there, and didn't quite work out. More recently, only slightly more recently, I guess, is Torres. When he signed in summer of 2007, he comes from Atletico Madrid, Spanish international. He's got the blonde hair, the white boots, the number 9 on his back, the sort of big money superstar striker, wasn't he? And he hit the ground straight away, and I think that's always important for big money transfers, but also keeping that enthusiasm and the excitement among the fan base when you start off well. Van Dijk, for everything Doyle just said then, Liverpool were crying out for a top centre back, and he came in overnight and fixed a lot of problems, didn't he? And I guess another one would be Alisson Becker.
I'd also say Thiago. Because he's still one of my favourite players ever to watch. I'm not fussed whether he kept on getting injured or not. I just would just put him there and I'll just watch him all day long.
The argument for Thiago was that he was the most exciting signing, or certainly the highest profile player that they probably ever bought.
In terms of success for previous
Yeah,
clubs,
because he'd only ever played for Barcelona and Bayern Munich. He'd just come off winning the Champions League with Bayern and possibly the Bundesliga.
And he'd been brilliant, hadn't he, that season?
Played for Spain, won the Euros. I'm not sure if he was at the World Cup in 2010, but just a huge name, wasn't he, in European football? And yeah, that's a really good shout.
Then he got injured, didn't he? You injured him? Who was it? It was Richarlison, yeah.
I do think that when they signed Thiago, I thought they were going to step it up a level, and they just won the league, and I thought, this is them.
I mean, to be fair, the following season after that, they did almost win everything. So
it was almost an anti-Liverpool signing, though, wasn't it? I feel like that was very much driven more by Klopp than the Liverpool hierarchy. 29 years old was he? Yeah. Still relatively cheap. Was it 25 million? But I think that's because he wanted a new challenge and just didn't quite work, did it? But certainly the 21-22, he was second half of that season. He was unbelievable, wasn't he?
For me, there are three, and none of them turned out that well. So
one of them not Emil.
Not
you weren't
really,
excited
no,
by Emil Heskey. That's what I'm surprised about. Did you learn to become excited over time?
Yeah.
Okay.
The three for me are Djibril Cissé, because I always remember that was the time when I kind of got into reading like football magazines and stuff like that. So you would read like 442 and World Soccer, and he was so built up, and again, the sort of like the blonde hair, that Auxerre kit, and I always remember him.
Did you like the cut of his jib?
Yeah. So yes. And they also struck a deal for him. It's like a year in advance, wasn't it? Basically. So
famously, those things always work really
well.
And
so you had that whole year to sort of think, oh, he's going to be good, and he did score a lot of goals in France. So I thought he would be very good. Diouf, again, similar reasons really, just because of the World Cup hype and some of the hype in some of the magazines and stuff like that. And the other one for me, and this is because I was away at the time and I wasn't really following football as closely, but Andy Carroll. It wasn't so much when he signed, because when he signed I was like, wow, 35 million for a player who hadn't really been at the top level that long, had he? In terms of
Newcastle were back in the Premier League and he was their main man for 6 months.
But I was like blown away. But I always remember when he signed, I was with a Newcastle fan at the time, and he was like devastated. So because he was so sad, I thought, we must have really got a good player. And then in his full Premier League debut, scored twice against Man City. Man City, and I thought, wow, he's going to be the next Shearer. And he was far from that. Although he did have some great moments. So
he had to Google his teammates, of course, as well. Famously on the
he had some qualities that were very obvious. But maybe didn't quite look after himself as well as an elite player should.
I think that's a problem with some players have that stature, because Duncan Ferguson had the same problem. Like, it didn't matter what he was doing on and off the pitch; he was always going to pick up certain injuries because of his size and his stature. So it was just one of those things.
Ultimately, didn't want to go to Liverpool, did he?
Well,
he said a few times that he almost just got pushed
that's
off the
fair
door.
enough. I mean, when you think about it, but it's not as if he didn't give it a go at Liverpool. But then when Brendan Rodgers turns up, it's like, not my player. Bye.
Yeah, completely different style, isn't it? But I Andy Carroll's one of those players who, he wasn't a good signing, but lots of good moments. I remember lots of good moments. And I kind of think back on him quite fondly, which is, more than you can say about someone like El Hadji. So thank you for that question. Another listener question. If you want to send me a question, by the way, before we start the pod, just so I've got them noted down, joe.rimmer@reachplc.com. Always happy to take them in advance. Andrew asks, just thinking about Liverpool's current
transfer. Has he not got a surname?
Andrew Tingy.
Just continue.
Okay. Just thinking about the current transfer activity and the amounts of money being spent, or maybe being spent, with the chance for striker and centre-back to come. Even with some outgoings, Liverpool are going to be spending big. Given FSG's model, do you think there's a risk of ticket hikes over the next few seasons? Pay for it all. In a word, no. There's always a risk that tickets go up.
It won't be because of that. It won't be because of that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, the increase in revenue needed to sort of finance someone like Florian Wirtz probably is negligible. So if they do go up, it won't be because they've had a big spending summer, I guess. No. It'll just be the rising costs. Want to put to Billy Hogan at some stage, I guess.
Would you welcome a tunnel club at Anfield?
To be fair,
the reason that we're asking that, by the way, is because Everton obviously have announced that.
We laughed, don't they? But I think all of these types of things eventually come in, whether you like them or not. If they make clubs money, then they'll want to be back.
I would be very much against it and would go around and just block up all the thingies if I could.
They have it at Man City, and they allow the people who are in there to just loiter in the mix zone with the reporters.
Yeah.
And I remember standing next to who's the star of Gone Girl? Can't remember her name.
Oh, I know
The
you
actress.
mean. She was in this one?
I didn't know it was her for ages. She was just there with like a little boy, and
No.
then just turning there. This is very weird. I'm trying to get 5 minutes with Van Dijk and got some Hollywood actress. I just couldn't see
Russian
that
with
at
fame
Anfield.
that you didn't even realise.
Yeah.
I've had one of them. I carried the microwave to the car of a Hollyoaks actress during my time at Argos, and I didn't know she was one until I came back in.
Who was it? Sorry.
Hollyoaks actress whose name escapes me, but
Who
when
was
I
the-
got
who was-
back in, there
Who
was
was the one that you saw? Sorry.
The star of Gone Girl, I can't remember
The
her name.
film, Rosamund Pike.
Rosamund
Rosamund
Pike,
Pike.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
it,
what I was
yeah.
thinking.
Pretty
Yeah,
big.
that's
Probably
actually
bigger
quite.
than
That is
mine.
quite a big name. Yeah,
She was
yeah.
next to us in the mix zone at the Etihad. Very strange.
Yeah. Did you get? What did you think of the performance?
great.
on, you missed your chance there. That would have been a good
so
exclusive.
I forget the question really now.
What was the
What
question?
we
We just
talked
went about the
about
Tunnel
the
Club.
Tunnel
Oh,
Club.
it was the
Anyway.
price hikes. Price hikes on the tickets.
Price hikes.
And tickets.
We've addressed that one anyway. Let's move on. Lots of people. We've got some more questions, which I will get to. I know lots of people are dropping them in the comments. We will come to them. But lots of people asking about Kerkez. So with Wirtz negotiations complete, do you anticipate Kerkez following quite closely behind?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the huge hold-up is. Liverpool trying to barter it down a little bit. I think Bournemouth are asking for around about 45 million for him, and Liverpool having just laid out 116 million for Florian Wirtz, perhaps trying to get that down a little bit. I don't foresee any issues with it at all. Liverpool haven't even put a bid in as recently as Thursday last week. So, yeah, I think Bournemouth are trying to get replacements in at the moment, aren't they?
They've just
It's
got it, haven't
someone
they? Yeah.
in the comments
Yeah.
it's just been confirmed.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So maybe we could see some further movement on that in the coming days as a result. I think Bournemouth, last week they certainly were anyway on the East Coast on a bit of a end of season holiday bonding trip type of thing. So that might have made communications a little bit more difficult with the time zones and whatever. But yeah, I'm not overly concerned about this one. I think the player is desperate to come, and Liverpool are working with a club who they have a really good relationship with.
And do you think this is just like Wirtz? Because we had a lot of this, didn't we? When they were negotiating for Wirtz, there was a confidence they were going to sign him, but they hadn't agreed a deal, and lots of people were getting quite worried about it. Do you think it's similar? You know, the player seems like he wants to come.
I think everybody already thinks that he's signed, as it were.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any kind of any interest in it unless he just actually comes out and says, right, you've signed. Everyone go, okay, well, we knew that was happening.
Yeah.
So I think that's one where, it's funny, wasn't it? We've said this a couple of times that the player came out the other week and went, I don't know sure where everybody's getting this idea that about transfer talk and Liverpool. It's like, because they follow you on social media, so you're doing it. Yeah. It's like it's obviously the modern day flirting, as it were.
You've
So-
replied to needs to Bent Boxack, who's obviously done Liverpool.com podcast in the past.
I'm glad you pronounced his name correctly there.
I think that's right. If it's not, I apologise to Bent. But Bent's obviously of Hungarian heritage, and he sort of said it's outrageous that Kerkez has been overlooked for Young Player of the Year and listed like a load of sort of impressive statistics for the season. And he actually replied to it saying, "Don't worry, other people did notice," like a winking emoji or something. So that was a clear inference that plans were afoot. And
His brother has also
it caught the eye.
Has been chatting about it as well. So they've
What's his
they've
brother
barely
called?
made any secret. I don't know. I just know he has been talking about it. His brother
Shame.
has said that the left back is soon to be a new player for Liverpool. So yeah, I mean they're hardly making any secret of it. So yeah,
Justin Kluivert got asked about it on international duty last week, and he said, "Yeah, it looks like he's going to go there. That'll be a good move for him."
Yeah, I hope he does go there.
I hope he does go. Yeah,
yeah.
It's on commission.
I know. Yeah, maybe he doesn't get on.
Exactly.
Right. Well, staying with the left back theme. Also, news emerged this weekend, Doyle, that Atletico Madrid are looking at Andrew Robertson, which was quite a surprise, really. It's not someone I think that we anticipated leaving this summer, but there's a possibility that he could. Would you let him go?
Well, only if Atletico Madrid bid a fair amount of money for him. If Atletico Madrid want to try and get him on the cheap, then no chance.
What if he wants to go?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Is that I think again they would have to bid a certain amount. You can't just go like, "Oh, there's €2 million for him." They'd be like, "Get lost."
Yeah.
If you think he's that good, then you can put a bit more. He's still got a year left on his contract. We saw what happened with Real Madrid and Trent. Obviously, a different player and a different age, but Yeah, it's an interesting one because, Atletico Madrid love the slightly seasoned full-backs from the Premier League. I mean, they signed Kyle Walker and Matt Doxey from Tottenham alone. Is there only two?
Trippier.
Did I say Kyle Walker? No, not him.
He
Kieran Trippier. Kieran Trippier. And they've already got Conor Gallagher. I know he's not a fullback, but they got him from Chelsea as well. So they signed Alvarez from Man City. And they're basically just taking all these Premier League players. It's like Conte at Napoli, which, to be fair, it won under Serie A title, so maybe there's something in it. But for Robertson, if he fancies it, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think he'd quite like to stay. I think for Liverpool, it would be better if he stayed as well, because I don't think Kerkez is necessarily going to go straight into the team, and I think Robertson will definitely get quite a lot of minutes next season. And of course, this had impacts on what might happen with Kostas Tsimikas, because if Robertson goes, there's no way Liverpool want Tsimikas to go, and maybe Tsimikas has already not resigned himself, but kind of thought, well, quite clearly, if they got a new left back coming in and Andy Robinson's still here, then surely I must be probably getting on my way because I need to want to be playing football, certainly at his age. So it's going to have a knock-on effect, but I think Atletico might be just chancing things a little bit. But it's good for Robertson when you think about it. This is somebody who spent the last year and a half people saying, you're past your best to get out, and everyone's getting excited about a new fullback coming in. But he's got Atletico Madrid coming after him. Although, and to be fair, if Atletico Madrid play as well as they did yesterday against PSG, they probably do need a left back.
He did a charity event last week, Robertson, at the Glen Eagles Hotel in Scotland, and he got asked by Sky Sports about his future, and he said discussions are underway over a new contract, and then basically welcomed the fight for Kerkez. Didn't name him, but said at Liverpool you'd always have competition for places. That's what we all expect. That's what I expect, and I'll welcome it almost. And that sort of tallied with something he said back in April, where I think he almost sort of said that he'd love to stay and sign a new contract. And what has changed since? Maybe the emergence of Atletico's interest. I'm not sure, but I think you wrote the piece on Saturday, didn't you, Doyle, that Liverpool haven't had any contact from Atletico. And if you read all the wording around the external reports, it's that Atletico Madrid is sort of thinking about making a move. So he's one of a number of options, and that is where it stands at the moment, we believe. So I hope Liverpool do hold on to him. I think it'd be a really good, healthy, strong area of the pitch if they do have Robertson at 31 as the seasoned veteran and the up and coming Kerkez 10 years younger, who is looking to eventually take the mantle as first choice. So that'd be the ideal way for Liverpool for me, but a lot depends on what he wants as a player. And the question for Liverpool from there would be how much are they willing to sort of recognise his service at the club? Does he leave on a bit of a cut price deal because he's been legendary figure, or do they sit tight and sort of demand what they think he's still worth?
Robertson's the first choice left back, and he will be at the start of the season in terms of when they get back together in July. So it'll be up to Kerkez to get it off him, basically, I think. I don't necessarily think it's like Wirtz where they've spent so much money on him that he's bound to play. Because Mamadashvili, they spent 30 million. He's not going to be first choice goalkeeper. Yeah. And Frimpong, there's no guarantee he's going to start the season either. At right back, it could easily be Conor Bradley, and it certainly will be Mo Salah if he's fit playing on the right wing. So I think that's a good thing for Liverpool, and that's why I think they'd ideally prefer for Robertson to still stick around, because there's somebody who... And the other thing is that they haven't got a vice-captain now, because Trent's gone, and he's one of the most senior players in the squad, and you do need players like that.
You need to be careful over the turnover, don't you? You can't be too...
We've got two questions about. I was going to ask that, so continue that thought, because two have asked how much change is too much change.
Yeah. It doesn't. I mean, you'd have to go back and look at it properly, but I'd be reluctant to say that it works. Very often when teams have quite a high turnover of playing staff during the season, particularly one who've just come off a title-winning team, who don't want to dismantle it too much. There's talk of Kwanzaa. I imagine the talk of Elliott will develop. Robertson now as well. What happens with Tsimikas? Queeve Keller has already left. Nunes. There's chatter about Diaz. So at some point, you're going to have to say, look, this is okay. Yeah. This is definitely not happening, and sort of work out what you want. And guess Liverpool will have more of an idea of what they want to happen behind the scenes, but there's a lot of players being linked with moves away at the moment, and not a whole lot being linked with moves in. You know, we know Wirtz will get done. Kerkez should be after that. But after that, you sort of who's coming in at the moment?
With Wirtz and Kerkez coming in, Liverpool could start the season assuming they both signed tomorrow, they could start the season tomorrow with the squad that they've got. And that's the thing, is that they don't necessarily need to buy anybody else. Anything else that happens after that will be dependent on which players leave. And you look at someone like, you could lose one of the forwards. You're looking at Chiesa and someone like that because he hardly played. So you could lose him and not have to replace him. But then after that, say Núñez goes, you need number 9. Say Diaz goes, you need a left winger. Would you say Elliott could go and they wouldn't have to replace him because they got enough in midfield?
I think Elliott could go. I think the players that could go would be Chiesa, Elliott.
That's kind of it.
That's kind of it. Yeah.
So that is it. Any of the centre backs go, they'll need to replace. Simple
Even
as
Gomez,
that.
who didn't play a great deal last season,
but
you would still want.
Yeah, you'd still need to
someone.
because you could say Endo could drop down there, but you don't want to be in a position where one of the centre backs is injured and then suddenly Endo's your backup one. Because Endo's, well as he's played there in the past, he's not played that often for Liverpool. There, in fact, last year he didn't play that often for him at all.
Sean Ford has asked in the comments, is there any world in which Núñez stays and Wirtz unlocks something in him? The next comment says, no, Sean. But I mean,
is that from you?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, let's talk, because we've kind of touched upon it now anyway. So the next business then, after Wirtz and Kerkez, really, you think will be dictated by outgoings, and mainly Núñez seems to be the one for me that unlocks the next tranche of business for Liverpool.
Yeah, no, I agree. What is interesting for me is the Saudi interest wasn't as pronounced as we maybe thought it was going to be while they could sign players for the Club World Cup, because if there's any league, any teams in a league who are going to take that competition more seriously, I'd imagine it's Saudi Pro League clubs, because of the prestige, obviously because of the money, but feels like Saudi clubs would love to have that feather in the cap because of what it would mean to them on the sort of world stage, whereas it maybe gives the Saudi Pro League a bit more credence in terms of just being expensive players who are past the best moving there for a sort of last payday. So the fact that no one really made a concerted effort to bring Núñez in is perhaps a little bit worrying for Liverpool's perspective. So if nothing develops on the Saudi front, Liverpool are going to have to bring down their asking price for clubs in Europe, because I don't think they're going to get 70 million plus for clubs in Europe, really, because there's not that many who can pay that, and certainly not for someone who the jury is still out on, I guess. So AC Milan and Napoli have been linked with them today in Italian media. Let's see what happens there. There was talk of Milan in January, but they were sort of waiting to see how it went. And then Sergio Conceição gets sacked, who was a big fan of him from his time in Portugal. So, I think if the Saudi interest doesn't sort of intensify, Liverpool will be looking at a different ballpark figure for what they can get for him.
Yeah, and then that changes, doesn't it, the incomings. Someone's asked, how likely are we to sign Isaac? I know you've both written that Isaac is someone they like, but I just think it feels...
anyone with eyes likes Isaac. Yeah. So Isaac,
I don't think Newcastle have to worry about it from a PSR perspective. Now they're obviously in the Champions League, so it will be tough getting them out of there, even had you not spent 116 million on Wirtz.
The only way to go is if he agitates to go. And then you're adding a little bit more money onto his price, and then you probably need to give Newcastle a player.
I just can't see Isaac happening. But there are forwards on there out there that
not many.
But they're not many. But there are forwards on there that have been linked that feel more realistic. Ekitike. I can never say
Ekitike. Hugo.
Yeah,
Hugo.
Just call him Hugo.
Yeah.
That feels like one to me. That I know there's a queue of clubs that seem to be looking at him, but it feels like one that seems more realistic. Like you could put together a deal with Frankfurt and make that happen.
Yeah. I mean, obviously lost Marmoush in January, didn't he? Which I guess was a long time in the making. The sort of club who sort of know that their place in the pecking order, because I think they've sold quite a few, haven't they, in the last sort of few years. Was Nikolajovic went to Real Madrid, didn't he, and a couple of others. So yeah, possibly. I'm not too sure what sort of fee Ekitike would command, but I guess there's a deal to be done with the club because they're used to doing it. So yeah, he's been linked with loads of clubs at the moment, isn't he? Chelsea, Man United.
Massive Man United fan, don't forget.
Yeah, apparently.
So
No.
I always get the feeling when you see players being linked to a number of clubs, it's a lot of the time that information is coming from the agents who perhaps want to make it known that there are several clubs looking at their clients. So, yeah, let's wait and see. I'm not too sure. Someone like Benjamin Sesko feels a little bit more realistic. You know, young Slovenian international at RB Leipzig who's travelled that path from Salzburg to Leipzig and is probably on the cusp of a move to a major European club now. Played against Liverpool in the Champions League last season, played against them in the friendly, actually scored the winner against them in a friendly for Salzburg.
He goes to Arsenal though, won't he?
Yeah, well, Arsenal are the ones who have been named, you know, most prominently, and the need for the striker is glaring, isn't it, really? So, you know, let's see. But I think, like you say, I think a lot of it depends on what happens with Nunes and or Diaz, who I don't expect to go, but possibly could if the right figure comes in.
That goes back to what we were saying before about teams. A lot of teams play three up front without really a proper striker, and that's why there are no strikers knocking around at the moment. It was interesting that Chelsea spent a reasonable amount on getting Delap from Ipswich, who he's very much a centre forward in the old style, and it'll be interesting to see how he does at Chelsea because even though they've signed about 31 strikers in the past 6 weeks. They seem to just want another one.
I've never seen a club that needs a striker as much as Chelsea, and they sign several every year. And you'll get to November, and Maresca, if he's still there, or the replacement more likely, will sit there going, "We just need to sign a striker."
Yeah. They signed Lukaku for 97 million 4 years ago, and how long ago does that feel? Like if Liverpool signed someone for that money, he's seeing through his contract at the very least.
Yeah, the following season, Pochettino was sat there every week saying we need to sign a striker. I was thinking they signed him and they signed the other fella. I know he got injured, the other fella, Nkunku, in the summer. Thinking, well,
who by the way is 27. I just can't get over that.
I mean, they've signed if you sign someone for 50 odd million, Nicholas Jackson as well, and you're saying we need to sign a striker, you could say we need to wait for our striker to get fit. I understand that, but they only ever think, don't they? Like, right, the next window, let's just buy what we need, and we've still got a few there that are sitting there now.
They've got so many players, Chelsea. Like, I'd completely forgotten about the lad who's been banned. Was his name? Yeah, they spent about 80 million on it or something stupid like that.
They named 28-man squad for the Club World Cup, I think, and they haven't got Raheem Sterling in there, João Felix, Ben Chilwell, or Axel Disasi, and that's about £150 million worth of players just left out.
Julian, friend of the pods, asked about João Pedro, which at one point I thought would sound quite realistic, but it's gone quite quiet. Do you think that if they wanted him, they might have made it known sooner rather than later?
Or it could be one where if they haven't got anyone by the end of the transfer window, they need one. They might get.
Well, interestingly, his Brighton teammate Igor Julio's been talking about Pedro's future, hasn't he? And he said he should move to Liverpool. Yeah, that should be the move that he wants. Yeah, there's
apparently he wants to stay in London, doesn't he?
Does he? Right. Yeah. I mean, there's
talk
of him. He's a bit Firmino-esque, isn't he? As opposed to a more traditional centre forward. Do Liverpool need more, trademark number 9 if they've already signed Wirtz for those sort of positions that you pick up behind the striker? I'd probably think Liverpool will be looking at something along the lines of a more traditional number 9 if they are to do anything this summer.
And before we finish off, one more question about Konate. If you're asking about his contract, is there any update? And do you sell if there isn't? I think Liverpool are in a really difficult position because it comes back to what we were saying earlier about the flux in the squad, and you don't really want to sell another senior centre half, do you? And then have to replace him this summer.
Yeah. Well, he said to us after the Palace game, which was May the 25th. It was actually his birthday at the time, wasn't it? He was very adamant that a lot of talk, a lot of speculation was, what did he call it? Fake. Yeah.
News,
I mean, he was very strong about it, and he didn't necessarily. It was unprompted when he said that as well. So he clearly wanted to get it off his chest. But he did say that the agent had met with the club the week prior to that Palace game and hinted that it was progressive talks and said, let's see what the next few weeks brings. So it sounded positive enough, but he's in the Trent category, isn't he, where you don't want to lose him for free. Liverpool were very, very relaxed in terms of losing the likes of Emre Can, Wijnaldum, Milner, Firmino. They were happy to lose all those players for nothing. Oxlade-Chamberlain, Keita, but I think it'd be a massive, error And they've got it wrong if Konate walks away for nothing.
You can forgive Trent in the sense that he was a local lad and they were negotiating for a while, that they got that wrong. But if it happens again with Konate, then you're worried it's a trend that they're not.
Yeah, I think for the long term, optics is a word we don't use very often.
Yeah.
I think if he doesn't sign a new contract by the middle of August, I'd love to sell him.
And then try and replace him.
Yeah.
You get to January and his value's drastically dropped, hasn't he? And you don't want to sell him mid-season anyway, and then you face with him leaving for nothing.
Yeah. Right, one more question just for you, Doyle, before we wrap this up. Andrew Smith wants to know if there will be a bottom spin-off.
Listen, you never ever want your bottom to spin off. I'll be honest. in the sin. Yeah.
Do you know what he means?
Yeah, because literally everybody knows what it means.
He didn't know.
Well, I didn't.
You didn't know?
I didn't know the name of the actor. I've heard of Bottom. I've never actually watched it, but I didn't
It's
know the name
literally
of
on
the actor.
WhatsApp. It's my profile
I
picture.
know, but I never knew his name. I knew it was someone that.
It's
looked a
Aid
bit like
Edmondson,
him.
but he's playing Eddie Hitler. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Right.
I think because that's why it's funny. Yeah.
I know, yeah.
That's why it's funny.
I love Bottom.
Yeah,
Right.
Bottom's good.
Adam Kane says, I'm hearing Kerkez is suing every day. Sick of it. It's been like that for weeks.
Well, it's not up to
Well,
us.
it's not, we're not the one. You know,
I don't
it's like,
think he's not having
no,
to do it.
no. I'm saying is that, but we sometimes get like grief on social media for like say, give us some update when it happens. It's like, yeah, well, we will do.
When
That's
it
not.
happens,
That's not like how the job works. Unfortunately,
I often think as well, people forget that we're talking about a deal worth 45 million quid.
Yeah.
It's not something you just, and I know they do, I suppose that the answer to that is they do sometimes on deadline day throw these deals together quite quickly. But
Yeah.
I think if you've got the time and space and you're not under pressure and you know the player wants to come, the club want him, everyone's on the same page, then there's no need to rush the details. Is it?
Yeah.
That's how you become a Man
and
United.
also
if you rush the details.
they don't want to buy his wages just yet.
Yeah,
That's the
Yeah.
other thing people forget.
Yeah.
And also as well, Hughes has been in negotiations. Simon Hughes, he's been in negotiations with Bayer Leverkusen for weeks, hasn't he? Over Wirtz.
Who's it? A Bayer Leverkusen? Sorry, is it Richard Roffler?
Richard Rolfes. Yeah. Like, how many hours a day do you want him to work?
I mean,
Well, according to the fans, he does nothing for most of the year. So
yeah.
Remember
Yeah.
Julian Ward when Liverpool signed Gakpo, he basically sacrificed Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Night to get it over the line with Marcel Brands. That's sort of what you have to do, I guess. But they don't have to do it at the moment, do they? The transfer window was only just reopened today.
And I do think it comes back to, with Kerkez, it's not like there's a bunch of clubs and Liverpool are one competing. It feels like everyone's on the same page. It's just about thrashing out the details. It feels like Bournemouth have conceded that he will go to Liverpool. It's just a question of how much and how you structure it.
Yeah.
It might be 40, like the Wirtz deal. It's how you structure those add-ons, isn't it? It might be 35 up front and 10 or 40 up front and 5. And it's probably those finer details. Take a while to thrash out, but it's a lot of money.
if you had to sacrifice one of Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day, which one's going?
Oh, Boxing Day.
Yeah, 100% Boxing Day's going.
Yeah, Box.
Yeah, good. I'm glad we're on
We do
agreement on that.
anyway.
I know, that's what I mean. Yeah. It's like, I haven't had one off since 1996.
And on that note, we will say goodbye. We will be back on... Right, well, actually, let's get this straight. We'll be back on Wednesday, because on Wednesday, the fixtures come out.
They are. Liverpool will be playing home and away against all the other teams.
I was going to say Ian will say something along those lines, but you've got the pleasure of Ian.
Liverpool's on a home one.
They're going to be at home first game out, they almost certainly, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
there you
Theo will be making a cameo as well. In that
Very
video.
good. I like that. That's very good.
The two of them together,
Very
they will
good.
be talking about fixtures, and then on Thursday, not Friday, Thursday, because the two of us like to demand.
No, don't.
Yeah,
don't
you demanded
don't-
last
don't
Thursday, I
drag me
demanded
into
this
your,
Thursday.
into your web of rescheduling. I suggested
You
it last
demand-
week to benefit all of us. You were just working from home on
Always
Friday.
all about the greater good.
Working from home,
on
yeah.
Friday. I have
Yeah.
to finish early to go and see about a kitchen. So it's exciting.
Is it your
as gets.
kitchen?
Yeah.
Where are you getting it?
Maybe Ren. Maybe Ren.
Oh,
Final
good.
details,
How
anyway.
much do you get paid?
Well, I'll explain the financials to you in a minute, Ian, if you really care.
Structured
Where-
deal,
where
yeah.
should-
It's
where
going to
should we
take.
get-
It's going to take. It's going
$3,000.
to. Yeah.
Where should we get the kitchen that's affordable? Do you know?
I don't know actually.
I
It's
don't
been
think the
ages. I
people
got
on
a
this
bathroom.
podcast are
I got a
that-
bathroom, yeah, but that was from Wix. That was years
are
ago.
that excited about this. But anyway, we will be back on Thursday
What time are we doing Wednesday? Asks Ian off camera.
Our producer, who should know. Wednesday morning at some point. Can't you organise that whilst we're not on air? that would be the...
Peek behind the curtains.
Yeah. In the morning sometime on Wednesday.
Well, fixtures are 9 a.m, aren't they?
Yeah. And
Well, it won't be 10. We've got work to do before that.
And then on Thursday, we'll be back to do the second Blood Red of the week. So if you want a question in for Thursday, drop me an email, joe.rim@reachplc.com, and we'll talk about it on Thursday. With you?
Thursday, yeah.
And with Theo, I think you're
It won't be me. I'm not off, but I can't come in.
Okay. Cool. We will see you then. Goodbye.